Hi, this is Keith Curtis with Things I Have Discovered. In one of the most difficult and dangerous times in Haiti, John Bowers once again found himself there to take encouragement to a Haitian pastor that he had known from his time there years earlier. With only the leading of the Lord, he set out to find this man, having no idea of the miraculous provision that was about to unfold through his obedience.
There was a pastor in the city of St. Mark that I knew to be a godly man, a national pastor whose life had been so changed. I really felt impressed that I needed to go see him, to see how he was, and to tell him I loved him and was thinking of him. And so we drove all the way up there, a couple-hour drive, and found that place where he lived and pulled into the driveway where his little house was. And we got out of the car and walked around the corner, and just then the man was coming out of the back side of the house and saw us, and he just beamed because there was hardly any foreigners in the country right then. They'd pretty much fled. And he said, "Pastor John," he said, "what are you doing here?" And I said, "I've come to see how you are and to let you know I love you." And I said, "If you would let me, I have a 100-pound bag of rice I would love to give you." I said, "Would you receive that?" He said, "Well, yes, thank you very much." And I had no idea the depth of difficulty that he was in at that time. And we visited, and then I asked him about somebody else in that same town. I said, "I'm looking for such and such a person also." And I said, "I don't know where they are anymore." He said, "Well, I can take you there." And so he got in the car with us, and we were going to go to where they were at. And these were missionaries. So I said to the missionaries and to the pastor that's with me, the national pastor, "Isn't the sandwich shop and the grocery just around the corner down here that used to be here when I lived there?" "Yeah, it's still there." I said, "Let's go down there and get something to eat and get something to drink." But while we're standing in this sandwich shop, this little street shop, God spoke to my heart and said, "Reach in your pocket and give this pastor some money." And as I reached into the pocket that I had a bunch of money in his money, and I started flipping through the bills, and I was just waiting for God to tell me to stop. And I was amazed that I was counting off the bills because I realized it was getting into a substantial amount of money. But God hadn't said stop, and I was counting it out. And by the time I got done, when God said, "That's enough," and then I handed this man the money, I gave him approximately the average equivalent of what would be 9 months of an annual salary for the average person there. And I handed him that cash because I knew he would be good with it. And I also knew that God told me to give it to him. And then there's a little grocery there. I said, "Could you guys use some other stuff?" I said, "The grocery's in here." I said, "Let's go in and pick out some things that you and your wife need." And we went in this grocery store, and the prices were as exorbitant for groceries as they were for gas. And so my friend that was with me, the American traveling with me, because I tried to get the pastor to pick out some things, and I could tell he was very reluctant to pick anything out. So I told my friend, "Anything you see him touch, you pick up also." I said, "Whatever he touches, whatever he looks at, thinking about he ought to get some of that, pick it up. If he picks another one up, pick another one up." And so we bought all kinds of food and rice and pasta and cooking oil, which was very, very expensive. And then we bought a couple special things for his kids and a couple things for his wife. And we loaded this up. And when we got up to the cash register, once again, the price on that total was again almost 9 months again, almost the same amount of money again. But God had us load that car up. And as we loaded that car up and was taking it back to his house, he got in the car and a tear was running down his face. And he said, "Pastor John," he said, "now I understand some of the Bible stories of God's provision of coming to Elijah and how he met their needs." And he said, he told me that for 3 days they'd had no food in their house and that they'd sold every single thing in their house. The only thing they had left was these 2 little wooden chairs that were on that porch that we were sitting on visiting him when we dropped that rice off. And he never told me that that house was empty and there was no food in that house. The night before, his wife had said, "Honey, what are we going to do? We have to feed our kids." He gave her the same answer that he had told her for the last 3 days. "Honey, God will provide." And he woke up that same morning that we got there, and he got up and he said, "God, I've been telling my wife that you're going to provide, but what am I going to do? How are you going to provide?" And God said, "I want you to take a walk." And so the pastor went out there and took a walk, and he had walked around the city in the little town of St. Mark and walked back to his house and walked back in the house and said, "Well, God, I took a walk. Now what?" And God said, "Take another walk." And when he took that second walk, that's when he walked out of his house just as we pulled in. And that's when he ran into us. And I said to my friend, that's when I heard that story, I said, "I don't know if he was early or we were late, but thank God we met anyways, because we were able to provide that man with not only food for his family and money to replace the things he had sold, but he had money and food to feed other people in his church that were desperately bad off afterwards. And he told me several years later, the next time I met him, that incident was so life-changing for him that he had never experienced that kind of lack ever again.
This true story by John Bowers is another demonstration of the goodness of God and of the miraculous provision that belongs to those who believe. With things I've discovered, this is Keith Curtis.